going to go ahead and use the stitching groover. I've decided. I would have liked to try to use my calipers, but I think there's just too many issues with that, and I know this works. One is I don't like the way that the stitches tend to still feel raised when you use the stitching groover. This might affect the strength of the shoe, but I don't think it's really that much of a problem. Just keep it minimal. Try not to dig too deep. So I'm going to go ahead and start marking my stitching holes. Don't necessarily need to mash all the way through. I bet there are pricking irons or punches that could actually make the entire length of the or the entire depth of the shoe, but I can't do that. So basically I'll just use this as a marker, and then I'll go back through with my drill press and complete the process. So one thing I do a lot lately is strop and wax my punches and my irons. Makes a huge difference. I'll do it every 5 or 6 strokes, and then I'll make sure I don't leave any extra compound on them or anything. But they come out so much easier, because when they don't come out easy, you'll know when you've experienced that, because you can just, it takes everything you got to pull them out of that leather. Looks like the roundness of it, I'll have to use my smaller 4-prong, but anyway, you see what I'm going to do. It's not too complicated. Basically, I'm just going to punch the holes around the entire thing. So after we've drilled, we'll go ahead and knock the dust out of our holes. The drill bit twists out some cement and some dusted leather that it cuts through, so it's a good idea to brush all that stuff out. At this point, I usually decide what I'm going to do as far as dyeing. I've had different results on whether or not I choose to dye. This is what it looks like undyed, if that's focused at all. I really like the way that looks. These are kind of dusty from being in my shop, but it's kind of neat contrast. But this time I'm going to go ahead and dye the edges just for a different look. And this is what it looks like post dyeing, and it'll make those threads pop, and that's what it did on the top strap anyway. And I'm going to put another coat of dye on the edges, but that's what we're doing next. So I brushed all the dust out, and I'll dye them, and then move on to sewing. I get that dye down in the stitching grooves as well. But that's kind of a neat look if you choose not to do that, not to dye. Matter of fact, I think I've done that every time. So this will be a different look. Ended up having to use my narrower threading of the needle because the knot was obnoxious. So maybe there's something to that. The knot is convenient and fast, but if you have thick layers of leather, it's a problem. And this is much smoother already. And I'm guessing this will take somewhere between 2 and 3 yards of sewing to get each one done. So we'll see. This is my first yard. But man, it makes a huge difference on having nice clean stitching holes. There's a difference between fighting every single hole because it's crooked or not big enough, and then versus an adequate size hole that's meant to be. The drill bit I use on my drill is the size of my needle, and maybe a little bit smaller because there's definitely some effort in getting the needle through, but not so much that it's impossible. And I usually use my finger guards to keep from getting cut by the string, but I'm being lazy and not putting them on. I haven't been cut lately, so I have decided not to do that. One thing I do once in a while, if I want to get some really good tension in my stitch, if it feels kind of loose, or if I feel like the stitches, like the last 2 or 3, start to get slack in them, I'll pull them really tight and just throw a random back stitch in there. And that's what I'm doing right there. About every 6 inches, I'll do that lately. I don't know if that's a fundamental error in how I'm sewing, which is possible, but I do switch it up. And I haven't found that it matters. How I sew, it seems to have the same issue of getting slack in it just here and there. Because sometimes I'll pass the needle through and pull it up, and then pass this one through, or I'll pull it through and pull it down, and then pass this one through. And it doesn't seem to make a difference in how tight the stitch is. But the back stitch definitely helps, and it gives you kind of a break from having to keep constant tension. A sewing awl might be a more intelligent way to do this too. So here we go. Losing my needle again. Alright, so we're back into our second stretch of thread. And used a rubber band and a screwdriver to pull the thong out of my way. It was getting kind of annoying. Do a quick back stitch here. just to kind of keep the tension. The stitching horse is one from Tandy, and it works okay. I do have constant snagging that's annoying that I could probably engineer out of it, but the screw head and the wing nut that provides tension and squeezes the workpiece is just really easy to snag. Throwing another back stitch right here, just because I'm going to have to rearrange my clamp anyway. Do another back stitch, and then I'm going to terminate this one too. And there it is.